Welcome to the Weekends Overrated. It's your host Don Dollar. Thanks for everybody who's tuning in. Those of you who've checked out the videos we put out so far. Big thanks. Appreciate all the views. Again, it's our goal to grow the channel and continue to put out content that's relatable. Discussing real things in real time. So, on today's What Did We Learn segment, I wanted to dive into when you have to make sure that these two things are in alignment, and that's the agenda and the purpose. So, I want to say about 3 years ago, roughly 2 or 3 years ago, I had wanted to start getting involved in like public speaking, and I had did a couple speaking engagements at local schools in Delaware, and I started to see the shift between my purpose and there, as in the individuals who were conducting the situation, their agenda. And the thing that I came out of it learning is that if they're not in alignment, it won't work. It just simply won't work. The first two speaking engagements I had went really well. I did Howard High School, and then I did Skyline Middle School. I actually was a former Skyline Middle School student, and I know 1,000 people, alumni from Howard. So, those two went really well. I feel like the speaking engagement went really well. The information that I was relaying to the youth, it went really well. And I was in talks with someone. I believe it was Red Clay related, but I was in talks with someone, and they had some type of, like, prior to the school year. I don't even know what you call it. I don't want to call it like a convention, but they had something where they organized like a before the school year where students and some staff members came. And the lady that I was speaking to, like I said, this has been a couple of years, so I don't recall names. And if I did, I probably wouldn't even go there. But when we were speaking prior to me doing I think it was a workshop. That's what it was. It was like a before the year workshop. And when we were speaking, I was letting her know, like, my whole goal and purpose in this is to, one, share my story, because I feel like a lot of the younger generation, the high school kids, they can learn, you know, where to really tap into, where to kind of stay away from, and really how to maximize, their time and resources at this particular point in their life, because this is the last step before adulthood. And, I was just kind of, going through, my story, school, college, you know, career, entrepreneurship, and we were on the same page. Like, everything that I wanted to talk about, everything that I was thinking of putting in terms of relatability to the kids, it was fairly understood. And when the day came, it was like a switch. Like, a there wasn't much structure to the workshop in real time. Like, prior to the workshop, it was, we were gonna do A, B, C, and D, and then during these sessions, you know, what do you want to talk about in these sessions? And I was like, okay, I want to talk about A, B, C, and D. And once the time came, it was like a lot of the talking points that I wanted to really speak on, they were just kind of, how can I put this? They were like glossed over. Like, it was like, yeah, I know we discussed this, but here's what we're gonna do. And the thing is that my purpose and wanting to share my story with the with the younger generation is really ultimately to set them up for success in the future. So when I'm getting verbiage from the individuals who's setting this workshop up to talk about things that, in my opinion, were just simply irrelevant. Um, there were, I think one of the topics were if kids were to speak up during um, their inconveniences that they may have going from classroom to classroom and the time that it takes to do so. And in my head, I'm like, so we're going to waste precious time on a minor inconvenience when life is going to give them a ton more inconveniences and adversities. So it was just like little, like agenda based things that kind of pulled away from the message. And I had like a follow up call with um, one of the people from Red Clay. I don't remember the lady's name, but this was like over all of the high schools. I think it was Red Clay and maybe Appoquinimink, something along those lines. And I remember she gave me like a critique of the speaking engagement, and it was very, I would say it wasn't productive because it was, I think it was just negative. It wasn't really like, okay, you did A, B, C, and D. We just want to make sure. The problem within that is that my talking points that I was prepared to speak on, I didn't get to speak on those because, again, the day of, the agenda switched. My purpose remained the same, but the agenda switched. And it got to a point where now I'm not speaking on, my story, or I'm not, engaging the students in a way that gets their mind focused on what's next in life, because right now it's temporary. Again, you're at the last stage of being a kid. Adulthood is right is the next thing. And I took the critique, and that was pretty much the last bit of contact. But years later, it just made me think that, and this has been an ongoing thing. I've been very vocal on wanting to start programs, and even writing up whole presentations for Delaware schools, high schools, predominantly my alma mater, AI. I've reached out to several principals, I've reached out to several administrators, and the problem always comes into, they have an agenda and then I have a purpose, and they don't align. Their agenda is to serve what, you know things that they want to get accomplished. They, as far as the microcosms, not the big picture, not things that the kids will be able to use and utilize, to make them more productive and just better individuals as they continue on in life. But the agenda is based on right here, right now, what typically serves the individuals who are in the power positions. And that's just one thing that, I have a, I'll continue to, try to, and what's the word? I'll continue to try to involve myself in, trying to make efforts to provide, like I said, programs and services to better suit the youth going forward, because a lot of people talk it, but I know what it's like to, be expelled. I know what it's like to be in alternative school. I know what it's like for people not to really expect much of you. I know what it's like to not really have any compass. I know what it's like to be my own compass and kind of navigate and try to figure out life, so to speak. And I think that that's just my opinion. I think that school districts, and I speak on Delaware because I'm from Delaware. I was educated in Delaware, so that's where I have to speak on. But it's not just Delaware. I've reached out to New Jersey school districts, and the thing is, when I reach out, I'm not reaching out just saying, "Hey, you know, I got this idea." Like I reach out with full, breakdowns of, hey, instead of um, instead of just kind of like what's the assembly line? Instead of having an assembly line approach to high school students, where it's like, okay, you're in ninth, you're in 10th, you're 11th, you're in 12th, cool. You'll do a little bit of state testing. You'll do some homework. You'll do a couple papers. You'll learn things that you'll never apply. Um, Prom, homecoming, or you might play a couple sports, so on and so forth. Okay, you graduate. See you later. Instead of like having that model, it's like, how can we improve? How can we make it better, right? And I even, I came up with a program. It was called Financially Focused Youth, right? It was like giving a breakdown on, the simple introduction of, money management, learning how to, operate a checking account, learning, the value of saving, the intro to investing, right? Just trying to like light that in entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of the youth, because that's needed. They're the next adults. Not everyone is going to go down the same path, and even evaluating what their next steps in life is going to be. Like, think about how much college costs, and then how unsure kids are when they enter into college. And if you're on any type of financial aid or things of that nature, you're making 20, 30, 40, $50,000 decisions that you're not even sure about, right? You might say, hey, I want to be a criminal justice major, but then halfway through it, you like, I don't want to do this. But then it's too late by now, because the money's already in the bank. And a lot of the focuses um, of the programs that I came up with wanted to give kids time to really focus on what their, I don't want to say passions are, because sometimes passions doesn't lead to economic viability, but I wanted to give them, like, there's no rush to jump to go straight to college right out of high school. And sometimes is a clock that goes in people's mind, like, oh, I gotta go now, or all my friends are going, or different things of that nature. And that's just continuing a cycle that's not a successful or conducive cycle. That's just creating more debt, creating it's stagnant. So the thing that I learned in all of this is, like I said, the purpose and the agenda. You got to make sure your purpose and their agenda are in alignment. And if at any point they're not in alignment, you got to separate. You got to separate. We got to go your separate ways. Got to. Because then now you're impeding your integrity, and you don't even have to. You simply don't. It's a thousand different ways to skin a cat, and if your mission, which is still my mission, to create a better tomorrow, but doing it today. So giving the youth the information today so that they can apply it tomorrow, so they can have you know understanding and not have to mess up and then have to fix things along the way, right? I think we're pretty beyond that point. So yeah, that's what I got for today, man. What did we learn for the day is your purpose, their agenda. Gotta make sure they're aligned. If they're not, walk away. Because 9 times out of 10, people who have agendas, they're typically not, what's the word I'm looking, they don't typically compromise. So, and you don't want to compromise, obviously. So, peace.